Hello. Last week we discussed Baruch de Spinoza and his understanding of religion, God and nature. And today we are going to discuss Friedrich Nietzsche and his understanding of genealogy. As you know, Nietzsche wrote a book called The Genealogy of Morality, and it helps us understand the true sources of moral values. Let us start with the first essay called Good and Evil, Good and Bad, and on Nietzsche's concept of resentment. For Nietzsche, the English psychologists John Locke and David Hume are the only other ones to attempt a naturalistic analysis of the origin of morality. What is their motivation in showing habit and association and other humble mechanisms at the basis of what others assume are the glories of human reason? Are these just displays of petty rancor towards the other worlders? Nietzsche hopes they are instead fundamentally brave, proud, and magnanimous animals, for such truths do exist. Not the courage needed for self-knowledge as well as the plurality of truths according to Nietzsche. Both are very strong Michel Foucauldian terms that Foucault took up later and developed. But their historical spirit is lacking, Nietzsche argues. They make a fundamentally non-genealogical mistake. They take their own contemporary value judgments about the utility of actions to the recipient of the action and project them backwards to the alleged origin. History for them is then thought to be the smooth development of his essential kernel, with only minor changes in appearance. That is, one forgets the utility aspect of other helpful acts and simply names the act good in itself. For Nietzsche, this picture of a sense/accident in history betrays the subject/property grammatical error that haunts metaphysics for a very long time. There are endless nuances to the history of metaphysics, but one of the closest matches to Nietzsche's complaint might be found in the theory of predicables in, let's say, Aristotle's Topics, where we see a subject with various types of predicates, and some denote its essence, others differentiate it from others in its genus, some denote necessary properties which do not define the subject, but nonetheless always accompany it as a unique property, and still others denote accidental properties. The relation of this doctrine to Aristotle's categories and in turn to the metaphysics is more than enough to occupy a good scholar's career. For Nietzsche, becoming is fundamental. There is no essence that develops through changing appearances. There is only the changes. Nietzsche claims that the good ones, the noble ones, first applied the term to themselves. This self-naming is part of the overflowing fullness of their life and power. They seized the right to create values from the patterns of distance they felt separating themselves from the common herd. Nietzsche stresses that the feeling of superiority is much too intense, much too hot to have anything to do with the cool calculation of utility that especially English psychologists Locke and Hume discussed. Nietzsche's physiology is accurate. It is not that utilitarian calculation in the absence of emotion. It is just that it requires a tepid emotion, a low-intensity body state. Descartes made the mistake of thinking that a low-intensity body state, the forgetting and proper digestion, Nietzsche shows essential for consciousness and its illusion of being disembodied when it touches its object for a real separation from the body. Nietzsche's second objection to the English hypothesis. How can the forgetting of utility work? Herbert Spencer seems more likely say that goodness simply means utility. Nietzsche's clue is the etymology of words, wherein he sees the same conceptual transformation. Noble in the social, political sense becomes good in the valuing sense, while common in the social sense becomes bad in the valuing sense. We can say that this is yet a morality, if morality is a universalizable injunction. An important nuance in naming derived from the feeling of superiority. The names are often simply about power, but also about a character trait, the truthful. The commoners are often the cowards. Nietzsche here gets into his race theory. Immense difficulties, of course. The main question, does Nietzsche consistently apply genealogical thinking in analyzing the production of strength and weakness in the conqueror and suppressed? For Nietzsche, conquerors are fair-haired and suppressed are dark-haired races. Or does he lapse into a reified metaphysical notion in which there is a subject endowed with the property strength or weakness? Then we should proceed to Nietzsche's key materialist thesis. He claims to the superiority of soul stem from claims to political superiority. When the political superior class is the priestly class, then purity of soul at first simply meant purity of bodily practice. Nietzsche here begins his examination of the priests. They tend to be unhealthy, he said, which keeps them from action, forcing them into brooding and emotional explosions, which leads to intestinal morbidity and neurasthenia. The priestly remedy for this, the ascetic ideal, has been terribly dangerous to mankind in fostering nihilism. But we can't forget that only the priests make man an interesting animal. Only with them does the soul acquire depth. Nietzsche opposes the health of the warrior nobles and the sickness of the priests. Priests are dangerous because they are physically impotent, which makes them devious haters by blocking immediate reactions to slights. Nietzsche here identifies the Jews as the priestly people par excellence. And then the monologue of the free spirit. The free spirit is a Democrat for Nietzsche. He applauds the slave revolt for having led to modern democracy. He doesn't like the church, as it is anti-modern, but only because it is too slow at spreading the poison of egalitarianism. But at least the free spirit is honest enough to see morality as disguised politics. The slave revolt in morality is due to the creativity of resentment, which gives birth to slave values. Noble valuation is active and self-affirmative. I am good, therefore those others are bad. While slave valuation is reactive and other-negating. The powerful others are evil, therefore I am good. Here, Gilles Deleuze, the French philosopher, is essential in distinguishing active and reactive. Even though priests are creative and powerful, they base themselves on the reactivity of the slaves. But what about resentment? Resentment is a matter of physiology. The active ones are those whose happiness is found when strength is manifested in action, while the reactive ones are those who need rest for happiness. Resentment breeds cleverness in the weak, while it is immediately consummated and extinguished in the strong. The nobles do not hold to forgive and forget. Rather, they forget so quickly and thoroughly that they have no need to forgive. Thus, the nobles can revere their enemies rather than hate them. They love a good opponent as the occasion to manifest their strength. The nobles are kept in check inter pairs, but when they go outside, they are like beasts of prey, like blown beasts. And interlude in which Nietzsche expresses his disdain with the cultivated modern theme social being, as he says, the problem of modernity and social production, who diets, what structures of feeling, what disciplinary institutions are needed for cooperation. The good, as conceived by the man of resentment, is a strong man who does not act, who freely chooses not to act. This is based on an illusion that there is a subject separate from action which is free to act or not act. For Nietzsche, this is due to the seduction of language. Thus the weak have taken their necessity of not acting and made it a virtue. I could have done that, but I didn't want to. I chose not to. I prefer not to. Hence the truth of the free subject is just the lie told for the self-preservation of the weak herd. This is the origin of slave morality as opposed to simply slave valuation. Only here is the injunction, be good, universalizable, that is applicable to the nobles as well. So for Nietzsche, what is the mark of the higher nature today? For Nietzsche, the struggle of noble and slave systems of morality is an eternal and spiritual struggle. An important sentence to destroy any lingering doubts as to whether Nietzsche harbors any nostalgia for the days of the warriors, such as Rome versus Judea, the Renaissance and the Reformation, the French Revolution, Napoleon, all seen as exemplifications of these types. The interpretive question then, which force is stronger in these events? What type of life is exemplified? Nietzsche's note, future studies of the history of morality will have to follow his lead in utilizing etymology, physiology, philosophy, and medicine in investigating the value of morality with regard to, first, a survival of greatest herd number, and second, production of a stronger type. Ansel Pearson, one of Nietzsche's scholars, locates here a key point in the relation of Nietzsche and Darwin. Natural selection as elimination of difference by stressing adaptation versus a creative profusion of internal differentiation that merely uses the environment as a testing ground for its experimentation. So in today's lesson, we also discussed Nietzsche's genealogy and especially the differentiation between slave and the noble morality. Of course, there are themes of self-knowledge and difficulties, but I hope you would make some sense of Nietzsche's argument. Thank you.